Hi, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all about parenting and good communication through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we're talking about lovingly guiding your child when they make mistakes. Mistakes happen. It's part of childhood. Some children do not handle mistakes well. They're a little bit more perfectionistic. Maybe it's because of their nature. Maybe it's because of their nurture. Maybe we've kept things just so that we don't accept mistakes very well either. Either way, though, we've got to learn how to accept mistakes, and it is the parent who teaches mistakes. In this video, we're going to talk about mistakes, what happens to a child when they experience a mistake, and what parents can do to lovingly help their children accept more mistakes. So what happens to a person when they experience a mistake? Sometimes when we find out that we did something wrong, we immediately attack ourselves and we start to think that the situation is bigger than it really was. In fact, that feeling of stress often comes into our hearts and into our brains. We start processing from a different place in our brain because of that elevated stress of recognizing that we didn't do something right. Now we're going to have to address it. It's going to take more time. So this increases the anxiety level inside the person. When a person has increased anxiety, oftentimes this is when the worst behavior comes out. This is when people start manipulating, making excuses, getting angry, or overly emotional. We don't want any of those things to happen when a person experiences a mistake. So what we need to do is make sure that we set up an environment and set up our own hearts and our own minds so that we are ready to make sure that home is the safest place to make mistakes, and that if a mistake happens, we are ready. So home should be the safest place to make mistakes. There was a time when I had to tell myself that. So I raised 4 children of my own. My baby just left the nest, so we are new empty nesters, which is, I gotta tell you what, weird for us. But also, I raised many foster children over the years, and those foster children made a lot of mistakes. I mean, that's one of the reasons that they came to my home. I was a therapeutic treatment care parent for troubled teens, all between the ages of 12 and 18. They had trauma and drama. They had processing difficulties. There were so many different things that they had been dealing with in their lives, oftentimes with issues related to their parents as well. So they had a lot going on, and they had some bad habits to overcome. This meant there were going to be repeated mistakes. I had to be ready for that. So I told myself, okay, this place, this home, has to be the safest place to make mistakes. I cannot take their mistakes personally. I've got to be ready for them making mistakes. In fact, I have to welcome mistakes. Not that I tell them, please make a mistake, but that when the mistakes happen, I think to myself, that's okay. That's what I'm meant for. That's what I'm here for, to help them with their mistakes. So mindset of the parent is huge when it comes to lovingly helping children accept the mistakes that they've made. We're going to talk about what you can do to be more loving when you're helping your children with their mistakes. But before we do that, why do you have a hard time being loving when your children are making mistakes? Or what have you noticed around you that other people struggle with when they are correcting a child when a child has made mistakes? Leave me a comment. And if there's something else that you want me to talk about in relation to children making mistakes, let me know in the comments below. So let's talk about what you can do to be more loving when your child has made mistakes. Number 1, recognize that you will have to correct the same thing again and again and again and again because they're a child. Their brains develop slowly. The prefrontal cortex of the brain is not fully developed until a person is like in their mid-20s. So this means that even though they know something shouldn't be done a certain way, they still might do it the wrong way again. even if you told them. So we have to have increased patience. Now, my husband told me when I married him, you should know I have no patience. And if you're going to marry me, just know I've been working on it. I've been praying on it for years. And I thought, boy, I didn't notice that he was an impatient person, but maybe he was looking ahead of, oh, I'm going to be a parent someday, and what if I'm not patient? Because there's a lot of things I'm not patient about. He was worried about that for himself. And truth be told, he didn't have patience. And he lost it quite a few times at the children, but because I decided to be patient with him because of his mistakes, guess what? He developed patience, and now he is an incredibly patient person. In fact, he's one of those husbands that I'm proud of. And I can say, honey, tell people how you had a change of heart and that change of patience. Developing a habit of patience is going to be your friend. When your children make mistakes, they need to know that that mistake was not something that was personal for you. So this means that you are going to have a tone of acceptance. When you accept something, that means you acknowledge this happened, and I'm okay with the fact that this happened. In fact, I can embrace that it happened and embrace the teaching moment that needs to happen next. So, acceptance. Can you accept that they looked at that thing on the computer that they shouldn't have? Can you accept that they ate one more cookie than they should have? Can you accept that they said an unkind word to somebody else and might need a correction right now? Can you accept those things? Those are all mistakes that people make. And loving parents recognize that childhood is the best time to make mistakes. I always told my children, I'm so glad that you made that mistake right now, because childhood is the perfect time to make that mistake. And since you made it right now, we can just have a simple conversation about it and we can fix it for the future. So, no problem. Home should be the safest place to make mistakes. Do not forget that. Having a tone of acceptance will be powerful. A tone of love is also going to be beneficial because you want to look at them with eyes of love. Having a tone of understanding so that you know they didn't do this because of any malicious intent, most likely. It's just because they're human. You understand that because you're a human too. Having a tone of kindness is going to also be helpful as you're communicating with them, so that they see that you truly do want their best interests to come to pass. But also, having a tone of low tolerances is going to be important in helping them learn. If they get away with their mistakes on a regular basis, then they actually won't improve. And that hurts them in the end. They don't like making mistakes. So we have to have low tolerances, which means we're going to be more consistent. That's another tone element that makes good parenting. When you're consistent, that means you correct something when it needs to be corrected. And if you have low tolerances, that means you are not going to tolerate it going beyond a certain mark before you will correct it. Now, when you do a good correction, you want to have a tone element of predictability. That means that the children know exactly how you will correct the problem every single time. This decreases their anxiety and increases their ability to accept the correction for that mistake from you. In this book, Parenting a House United, and in my TSG parenting course that you can find at teachingselfgovernment.com, I talk about how to do an effective correction. When you effectively correct someone, you have all of those tone elements that we just mentioned, but also you employ a predictable structure. This means there are certain steps that you follow and key words that you use every time that you do a correction. When you do a correction, it is most effective if you do not have an overreaction or even any kind of a reaction at all, really, when your child makes the mistake. So instead of going, what? Or what were you thinking? Those are all reactive statements. We don't want to be reactive in our parenting. We want to be proactive in our parenting, which means that we acknowledge and then move forward instead of holding on to feelings that we experienced in the past. So what I do when I do a correction is I focus on having good descriptive storytelling language instead of reactive emotional language. When I start telling a story, I go to front brain. When I react, I go to midbrain or sometimes even back brain if it was bad enough. We want to stay in front brain. This is where our logical processing is. And if we stay front brain, then chances are much more likely that the children will stay front brain too. So I start by doing a descriptive phrase. I describe the situation. I usually use a key word. That key word or phrase that I use most often is just now. Just now, I gave you an instruction, and you didn't look at me. You also didn't keep a calm face, voice, and body. And those are 2 of the 5 steps to following an instruction. Since you didn't do those 2 steps to following an instruction, then I know that you are not following an instruction right now. What you should have done was, aha, now we're going into another description. This description describes to them what should have happened. Then I'm going to explain to them a good rationale that matters to them, and then explain to them what they earned. So this is the consequence portion of the correction. After that, we do some good cued practice of what should have happened in order to help them have a good positive outcome for the correction and to have more times where I can praise them during the correction time. Then they get the opportunity to accept their consequence, whatever it is. They report back and get praised again. I usually try to praise children 5 times during one corrective teaching interaction. I would like to tell you more about how to do a proper correction so that you can maintain this loving, helping tone that we've been talking about when your children make mistakes. But there's so much more to tell. In fact, I recommend going to the full-length class that is on this channel called The Not-So-Known Secret for Parenting Success. In that class, I talk more about tone elements and structural elements that your family will need to have in place so that you can be better prepared for when they make mistakes.